Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your bed many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the day from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome, brother. How are we doing tonight? This is the Baldini's Brotherhood of Liberty. Right, brother? How you doing over there?
Pretty crappy.
Well, that guy over there is my brother. I finally got it right first time. That's my brother, John the Wick, John Wick the lawyer, and I am Jim the teacher. And we're both Baldinis, if you haven't figured that out. Just to clue you in on that. Tonight's show is going to be a startling, great episode of Once More Fighting for Freedom. We are going to be bringing you home and showing just what we're facing. So updates starting off, 3 segments on the updates. We're going to do like 3 little pieces on that. Then we're going to do Russia stealing the election. Then I'm going to have China updates. And then we're going to do Killing Jews Part 2. All right, so that's the plan for the evening. I hope that, by the way, if you're watching right now, it's best to like and subscribe to the channel as well as to the Facebook page. That always helps us to defeat the enemy, and we are in a life or death struggle for our country. So if you think that this is not a life or death struggle, this is not the place for you. Maybe you can try to be educated from what we're going to be talking about, but otherwise, make sure that you understand we are only one generation, less than a generation now, away from losing the freedom of our country. So let's dive in, brother, to the great unknown here. I have some of the updates. I want to talk about the general background, if I can get the overlay off for a moment. There it is. So if I can go over this video right here. Good Samaritan, brutally beaten. This guy stops to help somebody along the road, and they had a blown tire. He gets out, takes him to go get a replacement tire. Gets beat up in the process by the people he was helping. It's a sign of the times. I bring it up because it's a sign of the times. This elderly man who was beat up by a 19-year-old man and his girlfriend. It's certainly unacceptable. He's got brain bleed. For 11 days he's in the hospital. They weren't sure he was going to make it, but he did. And now he has to suffer the consequences of being a nice guy. That's the atmosphere that we're living in our country today. So that's actually not one of the 3 subjects, but that's just something I just wanted to mention. The first thing, John, let's talk about these people who are in the White House right now. Do you want to talk about embarrassing, a lack of diplomatic skill, lack of diplomatic ability? Not only do we have a guy who can't speak, but we now have a person who cannot even shake the hand of a foreign diplomat. Watch this, brother. You notice she's faking the South Korean, shaking the South Korean's foreign minister's hand there. And watch what she does with her hand. That's something.
What a fake she is, right?
What a faker. She's
is that her black half that thinks the poor Asian guy is slimy and she has to wash the hand off of there, or what?
John, it's one or the other. Do we have a guy who can't have a conversation unless he's being bought off? Or do we send somebody over there who's afraid to shake people's hands and wipes them on her skirt or pants or pantsuits? Well, what is it, John? Which one do we choose? Which one? I don't know. Uh, so I felt that that was fine. But let's talk about Joe Biden for a second, since I don't know if you're aware, John, that every president's first term, when they get in there, their first year in, they go to Notre Dame. It's kind of a tradition to do the commencement speech. Well, John, it turns out that Biden's anti-Catholicism has sparked a protest, and this is the cancel culture that we need to talk about. This is the cancel culture in reverse, stopping him from going into a Catholic high school university to do a speech. Now, because of his anti-Catholic views, his very strong pro-choice, pro-abortion stance, very
Pro baby killing.
strong. Yes, baby killing, and all of his other anti-Catholic views. Guess what? They signed a petition, just like they've done to all these conservatives, not wanting them to speak at this place or that place in their university. Here we have this guy getting canceled from Notre Dame. Now, of course, he's sitting there saying it's just a scheduling error, but we all know that's faux talk for a little nonsense of being afraid to go. So, John, by the way, hat tip to Gateway Pundit. I know that's something you go look at. But, John, let's imagine if he did go speak, shall we?
For example, there's a situation where there's an estimation of somewhere between 700 billion and $1.3 trillion if we hire up more IRS agents and we go after those folks who are avoiding taxes at the top end.
What the hell did he just say, John? What the hell did that guy just say? Can anybody translate? I mean, we're going to have to get a translator for this. But perhaps the most enjoyable thing about this is I want to point out this commencement for the Coast Guard, which Biden did attend. And, of course, what we see on the screen is Ronnie Reagan, who did the same joke. They told the same joke, and it's not an act of plagiarism because it's a well-known joke. It's a joke that is often used and has been used in multiple cases by different people over the decades in between Ronald Reagan and this guy Joe Biden. So let's listen to the comparison of the way it's received.
My Coast Guard aides have been excellent. One of them taught me that, and I quote, "The Coast Guard is that hard nucleus about which the Navy forms in time of war."
Notice the crowd, John. Very enthused, very happy, very glad. This is Reagan's at the end of his. It's actually at the very end of his second term that he did this speech. By the way, notice how good he looks. Notice how strong he looks. Notice how competent he looks and how much he's there. Remember, John, throughout the entire time, they used to complain about him having this Alzheimer's.
I can only assume that you will enjoy educating your family about how the Coast Guard is, quote, the hard nucleus around the Navy forms in times of war. You're a really dull class.
You're a really dull class. Let's insult them because they didn't laugh at my joke. Now, John, I know what happened. I really know what happened. Ronald Reagan is a great deliverer of his speeches. He does great. I mean, he's just a great communicator for a reason. The aides that Biden has, he has so many needs just to, someone to take care of his mask, someone to make sure he's, to walk next to him slow so he doesn't look like he's an old, brittle, frail man. He's got so many needs. They forgot to hold up the sign that says applause. That's what they forgot, John. Somebody to hold up the sign that says applause. They forgot that person. So that's one of our topics for this. And then I want to talk about the second thing, which is I want to talk about the fact check for this statement. And there's a statement going around that you are not allowed to be asked about whether you have gotten the vaccine or not because it's a violation of your HIPAA. It does not apply. And there's this, you see the headline here, which is really a USA Today headline because this paper has been bought out by USA Today, which we know is nothing more than a Democrat shill. We see that, oh no, the vaccine, they can ask you any question they want, and they go through this entire thing about how I'm not even going to bother diving into it too deep, but it's really just more propaganda for them, supporting their initial statement. And then you get all the way down into the bottom. Fact check: our rating is false. We rate the claim that HIPAA prohibits businesses and individuals from asking for others' vaccination status false, but it's not supported. But it is not supported by our research. Experts agree HIPAA applies only to healthcare entities sharing information. Now, this is the important part coming up. Healthcare entities can ask people for their vaccination status. Businesses can ask patrons and employers whether they have been vaccinated, and people can then choose whether they want to answer or forego the service. So, regardless of whether it's a HIPAA violation or not, you can tell them to go pound sand. So they're trying to go after, and it doesn't even address the entire core of the argument, which is there is a congresswoman who's going after Pelosi for demanding you have to have the vaccine in order to not wear a mask, or you should always have the mask on. There's this big argument going on Capitol Hill about it, and there's nothing about a government agency can or can't. It's only businesses can or can't. Does the government have a right to ask? And I think the answer is no, it doesn't have a right to ask, because it's, again, private information. Or if they can ask, you can tell them to go pound sand too, as our esteemed old man would say. So, I mean, if you want to throw in your opinion on there, please feel free, but you don't have to.
Okay, well,
okay,
no,
fair enough.
Right to conscience. Right to conscience is the literally foundation of America. America is because people like William Penn and the many political and religious refugees from Europe were having questions asked of them about their conscience and being forced to answer them. And that's why in Pennsylvania you couldn't even, when in the very beginning, when William Penn created the Pennswood, he you don't make an oath, because of course it was to Quaker doctrine that you don't swear an oath to God. You can make an affirmation. So it's been used as a tool to invade your consciousness and this sphere of your thoughts and your privacy. Now, I guarantee you, though, if they start asking, if the questions were, well, are you identify as a gay person, or if you identify, do you have AIDS? All of a sudden, it would be the shoe is on the other foot, and they would be crying up and screaming up. The ACLU would be crying and screaming up both coasts about about how it's a violation of HIPAA. Garen freaking teed it. But now, because they think that politically, a lot of people who won't wear masks are pro-Trumpers, and a lot of people who do, whether it's true or not, are anti-Trumper. They will use it as a cudgel to punish their political opposition. So business can exclude people, but they don't have a right to. But they can't do it. They can exclude anybody they want, but they can't do it on the basis of sex or race, or arbitrarily. So if a place is, I mean, I guess they could say you are allowed to go in there, but if they're discriminating against people and whether they are answering this question or not, you can make the argument that they are invading your consciousness. It's a big question. Again, it's just like the cake. In a lot of ways, it's like the cake mixing. How far can you force a business to accommodate your needs? Well, how far can the government require it? I mean, if the government can't require it, how far can the business require it? Well, basically, it would be one of those issues hashed out. Again, it seems like just another political cudgel that they're using against the pro-Trumpian, pro-liberal, pro-American side of the aisle.
I agree 100%. So we have one of the next items up for us to discuss is connected to our book that we published not too long ago, brother, called the Take Back the Star. as part of the Take Back the Star campaign. There's a portion of Oregon that wishes to secede from, or I should say, leave Oregon and join Idaho. So they're not looking to create their own state. They're not looking to become part of anything, but
Which they
it
should.
is.
That's what they
But-
should do, because there's
Right.
plenty of precedent for that.
Right. So we know that they, it has to go through the Oregon Assembly, and it also has to go through the U.S. Congress. So it's probably not something that's going to happen within the next 2 years. But they have 5 counties that are lined up on this. These 5 counties are set to, they've passed non-binding resolutions, and there's a handful of other counties that are on board. Now, the congressional seats up, there's 2 congressional seats that make up this area of Oregon that would wish to break away over, because it's not just the 5 counties, there's several more counties that are in the process of moving towards this. So you're looking at greater Idaho, as you see on the map. This is something that could be substantially, make Idaho substantially larger. And according to the reading, it would be the 3rd largest state landmass wise within the union. But it would also be, they're looking also to try to take some pieces away from California, which we know is not going to happen. But John, there is a 3rd avenue, which they can take, which we've talked about in our book. The 3rd avenue would involve not just going with the resolutions, but also, now that they have a political will and they're starting to build a political will, they should call a convention. Now there is precedence for this in West Virginia, when the Virginia legislature violated the Constitution. The Virginia legislature then no longer became the binding government of Virginia. At which point, when the Wheeling Convention came together and subsequently moved towards, with I think it was like 2 other conventions after that, subsequently moved towards statehood, they did it without the former legislature, but because they were no longer acting within the Constitution. So, John, we have to ask the question: is the Oregon state, and this goes for a lot of the blue states out there, is the Oregon state legislature working within the confines of the Constitution? And we have to answer no in some circumstances. And I don't know the full details, but take a state like New Jersey, where they're in violation of our Second Amendment rights, clearly in many cases, in violation of other rights, and not following the Constitution, such as this sanctuary state nonsense. This is a complete violation of the Constitution. They're not following the federal law. They're actually separating themselves from ICE. There's a movement within the state legislature to pass a law that forbids contracts of county jails accepting state federal contracts in order to house inmates. So, John, we're looking at a definite push from the states to no longer be following the Constitution. And this is a real good chance for us to test this. If Oregon's interested, they should call a convention to move forward. Your thoughts?
From right after, when it became from the founding fathers, when it became obvious that they were going to have parties, Jefferson and Madison laid out the legal argument at that time there was the Federalists, and then there was the New Jeffersonian Madison Party that were froze out of the elections. They laid the legal framework for separating from the United United States, and that's part of the problem with the Civil War, was that the legal argument for it is better than the legal argument for a union. Of course, because America is about self-rule and self-determination, and so at core, that's the American. That's who an individual American citizen is at core, and so it would translate that that a group of them together, countywide or a couple counties wide, would have that same right. Again, the legal argument for separation is better than the argument for keeping them in, and we, as we pointed out in the book, that's the way to go too, because otherwise you have the case of what you have in New Jersey, where you have just talking to Brotherhood of Liberty Christopher when I was up there. There, where the evil of the cities has metastasized into the little rural sections and into the counties of Sussex County, to degree that the city evil is now in Newton and in various little counties, so that if they don't do that, then they won't be able to cut off the dopey utopian cities and the evil metastasized one rule corrupt cities that they do, whether it's in Chicago and Illinois, whether it's in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, or in any other states. We recommended it throughout the United States. That's a way to they want to play games. They're going to play games with Puerto Rico and DC. This is the fight back. This is what we recommended.
Well, and to be clear, we're not advocating secession from the Union. We're advocating, breaking and forming your own state, or joining a state that fits your area's liking. But
I didn't mean. But the legal arguments for that are better than the legal arguments to keep them in. Basically, we are a system built on counties. And so if a few counties want to create a state, as you know, the precedent of West Virginia, that's how we got the state of West Virginia. And now it looks like we need a state of Central Virginia and Eastern Virginia, and throughout all the states.
Yeah, somebody said that one response that we got on this was that it was going to break up the country, and that's just something that would cause it to break into smaller sections. And I disagree vehemently. I think that it'll bring us together, because then the people who are parts of this state will feel as if they have a say in how their state is run. Whereas today, the parts that are not part of the city, the blue dopey utopia, have virtually no say on how our states run, which is why we still have masks being worn everywhere that's a public facility in the state of New Jersey, whereas the CDC has said not need it. Not that I agree with the CDC on everything, but if the federal government has already dropped it, why hasn't the state? Because a tyrannical governor thinks that it's perfectly okay to sit there and mandate it and continue to mandate, because his science backs it up, whatever that means. And so, that's exactly the problem that we're having right now. And these guys aren't connected to their local communities, John. They're connected to the city communities.
Why do the idiots in Newark and who have failed completely, and Trenton, who have failed completely to take care of those areas, think they can tell Sussex County and Newton how to live their lives? Why do they think that's a good idea?
Well, and again, we'll take it into broader. Why do the people in Salem or in Portland think they can tell the rest of Oregon how to run their state? Because these people, and articles that I have that I got together for this, they all point to, outside of the Epic Times here, they all make it seem like, they're just a bunch of rural hicks. They don't know what they're doing. They're so unpopulated. They're smaller, but you know what, John? They got 2 congressional seats, and there's 5 congressional seats in the entire state. So they do have, 2/5. That's a large amount of people. That's 1.5 million people who are looking to move into the city of, or the state of Idaho. So this is a pretty big deal. I think this is going to be something on the horizon, especially in 2022 when Republicans take back the House and the Senate. I think that's going to be a big deal, brother. So that's it for this angle. We now have the Russia stealing the elections, brother.
Yes, Russia. Of course, we're talking about the 2020 election again, but so that the YouTube overlords and masters don't get confused or anything. We're talking about not the Democrats stealing the election. We're talking about Russia, and the Russians stealing the election. That's how. That's why we can talk about this. So a couple of developments are very interesting. So this is really an update on the on the Ballistic Patriot journalistic investigation of the Russia interference in the 2020 election to get past the YouTube masters. And there's been some interesting developments. Right now, the lead point of this is what's going on in Arizona and the Arizona audit of Maricopa County. The great Republican leader of Arizona, Kelly Ward, who's the leader of the Republican Party in there, and has managed to get the Arizona Senate to do an actual audit of the ballots from Maricopa County. Remember, Arizona was won by 10,000 votes, so it's a significant one. What they're doing is Arizona has paper ballot as backup, and they're going through the paper ballots, and it's all on video, which is why it's kind of ridiculous when you see the mess. If you Google this, you will find nothing but mass hysteria from the media about how it's not transparent. Literally, it's all on the internet. It's all on video. Everything is multiple cameras as they do this audit, and everybody on the floor is in different color t-shirts and identified by a log, so you can identify who they're. You can't have a more transparent audit impossible. You would wish the vote was this transparent to begin with, but it looks like it's the first real forensic audit of the actual ballots, and they're looking for of course, duplicates of the folds. The guy named Pulitzer came out, the guy who does the fraud investigations, says you can tell how many times a piece of paper has been folded. You can tell there are certain markers. He created a bunch of patents to take things that are paper and put them through a scan, and from that scan tell how many times it's been folded, how many times it's been touched, and of course whether it's a duplicate, exact copy of another. So he has a bunch of patents to forensic scanning material, scanning computers of paper to see whether it was fraudulently made. Obviously, if you have a duplicate that's more than one time, that's a problem. So they're putting it, looks like this, through this first forensic audit, and that's big. If they continue with this, and they've been going after every Democratic operative that there is known, but particularly all of the Hillary camp, the Mark Ireson, the guy who's literally the architect of the 2020 theft of that, is over there. He's a big time Hillary lawyer, and all his other usual suspects are there trying to do everything they can, even to the extent that the AG, Girl Garland, has made a threat that he's going to stop the audit. Well, if it's not stolen, if it wasn't stolen by the Russians, what's everybody worried about?
Exactly.
You would think these paper ballots, which were supposed to keep by law for 22 months, that would be the most important question that they were going to do, is going to go through all these ballots and make sure none of them are fraudulent. You would think that all the states are going to prove the Trumpers wrong. If you really believe that the Russians didn't steal this election, prove Trump wrong by proving the validity of all these and auditing all of them. But right now, it's only Arizona and New Hampshire that are actually doing forensic audits. Although it's a question about whether New Hampshire's audit is being done on the up and up. It's done with none of the transparency that's being done in Arizona. Like I said, go on the internet, see the different colored T-shirts everybody has, and you can go through the entire log of who's there and what they're doing. Unlike, as for example, in the Georgia ballot, the Georgia election, where in the middle of the night, all the watchers are gone and they pull out boxes of ballots from underneath the table. So this is big in the sense that if it comes back, and this week on Monday they had the Maricopa apparently what's come out in the audit of the machines is that in Maricopa County, the actual machine county database for voted people, not voters, was erased. Now they might have another copy of that, but this week the Maricopa County committee council people were supposed to come up with a reason for that, and they haven't had a reason for that about why the actual people that voted, the database for the people that voted was actually erased. But it looks like they have actually found another copy of the people that voted versus the people voting for voters for that database. So that investigation is continuing. Now, one of the counties in Georgia is also, a judge is also letting a investigation go forward for that. So those three counties are going forward. Those three areas are going forward. Of course, There's still litigation in Michigan. The main one being the fact that after 8 p.m., when all elections were supposed to be over, they have videotape of a truck showing up with boxes like 9 hours later being emptied of ballots. But nothing supposedly is happening in Pennsylvania. It's supposed to be happening all behind the scenes. But just taking for what we know about the actual ones that are going on right now, and of course, Wisconsin has that constitutional problem with over 200 votes for people that were supposed to be indefinitely confined, whereas they weren't. They were just
200,000, right?
Right. And that margin was 20,000. So now, if it was just that, well, of course they're going to find out an excuse. Their excuse is this: well, it's over, so you can't do anything. As if if somebody in the criminal world steals something and they've stolen it and they've gotten away with it for the moment, like they don't ever have to pay restitution for that. Like they're never held accountable for that. No, that's not the way things work. All right. If it is a fraud or a fraudulent check, you have to pay for that. Or you go to jail for that. Not only that, you have to make whole the people that do it. But so say they say, oh, that was just a one-time a deal in Wisconsin, and so they try and let that go. The problem with that is really this underlying it all. Ultimately, all the left is doing is really a holding action, because nobody seriously believes that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Nobody. And that Trump got 74 million. And that whereas good old O'Biden at his best in 2008, where I have it here. Yeah. Biden at his best in 2008 got 69 million. So good old Biden got 81 million. Obama at his best got 69, and then after 4 years he only got 65 million. Obama. So they believe that he got that much. Now it's completely believable, and all the statistics show that Trump did increase his vote from 63 million to 74 million, because he doubled his percentages in the Hispanic and doubled his percentages in the black communities at all-time highs. So Trump did get 74 million, but Biden got 81 million. Listen, I don't need to know that Trump won Florida by 400 million. I don't need to see the ballots, but I mean, because in one sense, Trump's not going to win Florida by 400 million and lose Georgia right over the border. There's just a border by 10,000. Okay, 12,000. Okay, that's just nonsense. He's not going to win Ohio by 8 points and then lose Pennsylvania right over the border. It's a border. It's the same people in Western Ohio. In Ohio that are in Western Pennsylvania. It's the same people. Just drive right through. Right. Same thing with Georgia and Florida. Same people. All right. There's no way. So I don't need to see the results of this, but it does lay up this interesting question. So say the Arizona votes, they can't turn it back, but they can uncertify their vote. And all of a sudden it gets down to, if Arizona was down to Arizona's votes is how many is Georgia 16 and Arizona had what
11. I think it's 11 electoral.
So you won 306. So with 306 it takes it down. Say Arizona is uncertified, then it goes down to 295. If Georgia, which we saw the videotape, right? We all saw that video. You can try and explain like there's a good reason to hide boxes of ballots underneath a shirted table all day long. You're just a liar and a thief, okay? But whatever. Say that one goes down, then you're talking 279, right? Just two states. You're down to 279, and then you might see Michigan actually like look into that, and then New Hampshire, and then of course the big Mahaff, where 96% of votes, some 700,000 votes were materialized in the dead of night in Pennsylvania, to put him over the top.
Not suspicious at all.
So, but again, in one sense, it's all a delaying thing, because Trumpy's voters. The difference between the Republicans and between us and them is this: our voters are real people. So they're going to have to do this again. So they in pretty soon, within a year, we're going to have the midterms, and then you're going to have because we called it here before, if it wasn't for the chicanery, then it looks like we would have won. I mean, I think there's only ultimately 6 or 7, and that would have been enough to flip it over because there's a constant turnaround in the 500 people in the people die, people get sick.
Right.
There's reasons why. So that would have been enough to turn it over at least the Congress this time. And what's missing too is don't forget the Arizona is also the place where McSally and that nut job Kelly, that astronaut nut job, won. So if the Arizona gets flipped at all, the Senate could flip back just like that. And it's going to happen in the next election cycle. That the House is going to flip back, and then so it's probably unlikely that you're going to get it decertified because the election is already happened. But as we know now, as what's happened to poor Trumpy, the easiest way to like really if one of these states goes down and it's proven that the fraudulent nonsense that went on in Arizona upsets that apple bar and maybe another state, well, maybe then it's time for I don't want to say the word, but what's that word? What happened to Trump? Impeachment. of good old Commie Cali.
It would be perfectly
President Asterisk. So
it would be perfectly within the bounds of legal justification.
Now I wouldn't be doing my job, and we would be in a lot of trouble with YouTube if I didn't tie this all up to the Russians. All right, so let's make that tie. All right, now there is one political faction out there that, for example, provided a Russian dossier allegedly of Russian secrets about Donald Trump, right? That created the Mueller investigation that hamstrung the Trump president, the American President Trump administration for 3 years. Okay, one individual was involved in that, right? And that individual also stole the election from Bernie Sanders.
That's right.
right. And then again. Had Bernie Sanders had election stolen from him in 2020 again. So that's 2 elections that were stolen, proof wise. And the influence. And as we all know, thanks to the Uranium One deal, a certain individual got something like nobody knows how much money, but over $200 million for selling off 20% of the
American
uranium to the Ruskies so they can make nuclear weapons. And the tipper off too is Joe Biden just stopped the U.S. Pipelines and is doing everything he can to kill pipelines in America, but it's greenlit the pipeline from Russia to Germany. Almost as if he's a Russian stooge, allowing Putin to have total now control over the natural gas, and meaning the energy production, the factory production, and the heating of this of Germany, of that East German commie, German Hillary angle. Get away from me, German Hillary, right? So I'm just putting all these out there, and if I was to connect the dots,
brother,
I'd have to say we have to call up our best buddy Adam Schiff and say, hey, Russia, you were right, man. You got to get on this. You got to get on these Russians.
Because it's definitely the Russians.
It's the Russians, man. All right.
All right,
that's
brother.
our election update.
All right. So now we're gonna slide into China. I wanna start before I go any further. I want to point out that something that was made clear to me when I was watching Gordon Chang. He mentioned about. Do you remember Fang Fang, John?
Fang Fang.
Swalwell's girlfriend. So you understand that when they were looking at Swalwell, when they started to send Fang Fang in to coerce and co-opt the Swalwell, this guy. When was it, John? When do you think they started to go after him to identify him as a mark? Let's call him a mark.
About 4 years ago.
Nope. They identified him a mark while he was still, I think he was mayor of whatever city he was a mayor of. John, they went after this guy when he was just a mayor of a city. They saw in him that he was going to grow. But John, I got to ask you, if they're going, do you think that Fang Fang is the only Chinese operative in this country that's trying to co-opt our elected leaders?
I'm not supposed to pretend stupid now at this point, or be stupid.
The answer is there's definitely a lot more, probably thousands more. Because John, if you think about it, this nobody, Swalwell was a nobody. He's still a nobody, but other than a well-known, in the only way he's known for is for being an idiot. But we know that Swalwell was a nobody when he was first tagged. And so when we see that, we can also recognize that there's probably a whole bunch of these Chinese operatives out there working directly for China to gather and to co-opt these Democrats and Republicans who early on in their career, so that they can bring them into the fold and get them to vote the way that Winnie the Pooh, the Chinese dictator, wants them to. So, I mean, John, this is a clear and present danger to our country that we have. And John, I want to be clear also, the FBI, where's the FBI on this? We know that the Chinese communists are leading a large contingent of operatives within our country that aren't the Fang Fangs, but they're also working for groups like Liberation Road. They're also working for these communist groups. We have about a good 1,000 or so communist organizers in our country as of today. And we know this because back in 2010, maybe it was 2010, I think it was, there was a whole cross-the-country raid against these communists by the FBI that they were taken and they were arrested. And John, you know what happened to all these arrests, to all
No.
these? And when I say evidence was taken out by the truckload, I'm not understating it. They were all let go, John. None of the cases went to trial. You know why?
No, I don't.
Who was president in 2010? Obama. And you had his Justice Department that was not willing to prosecute. So it's clear you have this, and to be also clear, and we've talked about this in our other shows, the Democrats have a very strong leaning towards the commies, whether they're Chinese commies or whether they're Russian commies. But to be clear, they are mostly now Chinese communists. The Chi-coms are the ones who are driving I want to say a good portion, about 30% of the Democratic Party towards, and they're not coming out as their allies. What they do is they go into these campaigns to help Obama. That's where a number of the commies were helping out with Obama. They were linked to the campaign. So if they went to trial, it would come out that they were linked to the campaign. If they're linked to the campaign of the President Obama, then, John, that's a completely unacceptable thing. So they had to drop those cases. So I get this information, and I'm looking at it, and I wonder, what is the real goal here of the Bidens, and what is their real goal? And I'm looking at this because we think that the Bidens are just accepting money from the Chinese and bought and paid for, that they're the Manchurian candidate, right? That they're the ones who are working within the system. But John, I got to tell you something. I think we're looking at this the wrong way. I think that the Bidens are really part of this establishment that would welcome a war with China. They would welcome a war with China. I don't say it, I say it in a manner to be clear that I don't welcome it, but they want a war with China because that will drum up support. It'll put more Democrats in office. It'll drive more people to be patriotic Americans and support the administration, because right now, John, they're not supporting the administration. We see that
It's the
FDR model of World War II, but this isn't a conspiracy theory. I don't want you to look at it as a conspiracy theory.
Because I just spent like 15 minutes going Russia, Russia, Russia. So we have to have that debate. China.
Well, I mean, I think it's because Mao's cooler, John. Mao's cooler than Lenin. He's more cooler than Lenin. That's what it comes down to. I'm not saying that there isn't Russian commies that we have to contend with. I'm just saying that the money is really coming from the Chi-coms. So So I want to get that out there because most recently, John, and here I'll share this on our screen and get rid of the overlay. But there we go. Pentagon chief unable to talk to Chinese military leaders despite repeated attempts. Now, this is something that that Secretary Austin here is unable to have a conversation. It's not a good thing for our country. This is something you can expect the Chinese to start doing, to being intransigent in their their attempts to work with us on things. We've already seen that with what happened in Alaska. This is more of the same, more of the same garbage that they're trying to do. We also know that the Secretary Austin is much more interested in wokeism in the military, dealing with the supposed white supremacists, and more interested in dealing with that and getting rid of all the patriotic Americans in there who stand up for America and that they want to try to malign and say are white supremacists. He's out to get them, and he's not out to deal with making sure our military can fight a war. Because, John, one of the things that is going on out there right now, and I want you to look at these two articles, and I want you to tell me your point of view from when you look at these headlines on these articles. First, this one. Same ship, same incident. Got it? China says U.S. warship illegally enters its territory in South China Sea. Same U.S. destroyer re-enters Parcel waters, shows support to freedom of navigation. Same incident, John. What do you think of that?
I don't know. What am I supposed to think about that?
I'm just asking your opinion. What I take away from that, I'll tell you what I take away is you got something like the Epoch Times here, which they want to try to malign as a right-wing website or a pro-Trump website. Here they are putting America out there, they're supporting the freedom of navigation, whereas for the ones that are bought and paid for by the Chinese, Reuters, China says U.S. warship illegally enters its territory in South China Sea. When if you read the article, you'll clearly see, John, it says that this is a disputed area. The Parcel Islands are nowhere near the Chinese coast, yet the Chinese seem to want to claim it. There's the Parcel Islands right there. Now, Vietnam and Taiwan and China claim these islands, and I'm sure that they're, but I want to make it clear that this is something that's still out for debate. Yet, Reuters is taking the path that China's right and everyone else is wrong. I'm not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. This is what we should expect from these people. They're nothing more than water carriers for the Chinese Chicoms, and we shouldn't expect anything other than that. I want to look at one last thing before I pass the baton back to you, brother. We have the Philippines are at the forefront of this battle. The Philippine Navy is pushing against the Chinese, who are trying to take over the South China Sea and make it their little lake. The reason why the Philippines feel so emboldened by this is because they actually have won a court case outlining the fact that they have the rights to the islands that are in dispute. That not the Parcel Islands, but the islands discussed in here, and that they have had over almost 300 incursions into their territory since Biden moved into the White House. So I look at this and I say, what the hell is going on? What the hell is going on with China to think that they can do it? And where is the Biden administration? What are they trying to do? Because they're saying that they're supporting, and there's some things that they're doing to try to make us to try to stand up to China. I get that. They are trying to do that. But they've also do stupid things like turn over our electrical grid to possible Chinese intervention. And a lot of people go, what's the big deal? It's just we're just getting Chinese products sold to us from China that are going into our electrical grid. What's the problem? It's going to be our grid. We're going to have control of it. But John, what they don't know is India, not too long ago, really ticked off the Chinese. I don't know if you remember this, but there was this little fight on the border. They've been going back and forth at it, and the Chinese have been very, very upset with India. Do you know what happened at the same time? Seems that the financial center of India lost electricity magically because it was hacked. And it was hacked by, they don't know who, John. But can you guess who? Can you guess who put in the electronics to this?
The Russians, James. It's all the Russians,
And
just
it's
like
not
in
the Russians.
America.
It was the Chi-Coms. It was the Chi-Coms, John. The Chi-Coms. The Chi-Coms are the ones who put in the electronics. I get what you're trying to say.
You're going to use me as a stooge. You got to tell me beforehand. What am I supposed to say?
You can say the Russians all you want, but it's the Chinese electronics, John. That's what's going on here. We're losing this battle to keep control of our country because we're allowing the insidious method of them coming into it and taking over sections of it. If we lose power because of the Chinese, it is directly related, or if we lose power at all, I should say, it's directly related to Biden. There's no way to say it's not, because his actions are the one that's allowing us to buy Chinese products, bolstering their economy while taking away from our companies in our country. That's it for me, brother. Let's move on to your section on Killing Jews Part 2.
Socialists Killing the Jews Part 2.
Socialists Killing the Jews Part 2.
As we updated last week with the current war in the Middle East, the Palestinians have launched missiles and attacks towards the poor Israelis, civilians, and the Israelis have fought back. Currently, there is a momentary ceasefire while the Palestinians rearm. It came up this week that the socialists in the Congress are again
John,
trying to stop.
I have to interrupt you. It's not because they're rearming. It's because the great Biden was on the phone with them all week trying to get them to stop fighting, John. It's not because they're rearming. We don't want the censors to nail us for false facts.
Right, with false facts. That and they're rearming. But they this week, good old the socialists are at it again in Congress, trying to stop the sale of 700 million JDAMs, the passing of $700 million worth of JDAMs, which are back to the Israelis, so that the Israelis can defend themselves. Now, the JDAMs are, of course, they're the smart bombs. It's just a package that they put on old iron bombs. An old iron bomb bombing, it used to be, you have to go in with a big bomber. You lay some bombs down. You have to lay a whole carpet down of bombs just to get your one tiny little target, whatever it is, and you can knock down a whole city and still miss. And then the Americans came up with the idea of JDAMs, which is put it like a GPS little thing on the tail, on a tailspin, and they can guide it right into where it is. So it's a very humane way of fighting, because basically you're exchanging the wholesale collateral damage that happens, what used to happen in bombing, with a precision bomb. You're turning these old iron bombs into precision bombs, and Boeing makes this package for the bombs, and the Israelis need it because they're fighting to try and defend themselves. And of course, the cowardly Palestinians are hiding behind hospitals, mosques, and children's schools, so that they can avoid the Israelis shooting at them. And of course, as Golda Meir famously said, "We will forgive you for killing our Jewish children, but we will never forgive you for making us kill your children." So the JDAM is a very important thing, and surprise, surprise, who comes out against it? Well, only the socialists, only good old sleepy creepy Bernie Sanders in the Senate, and of course the squad in Congress. They come out against the Israel rearming themselves with this. Now, if they were really caring about the children, if they're really caring about people, then they would want the Israelis to have these mechanisms to carefully, strategically, surgically strike the evil people throwing missiles at them and killing their children. But no, they came out and stop it. And it brings the question up again: the socialists. Another example of the socialists killing Jews. And why do socialists kill Jews? Well, it's real simple, because they're a bunch of anti-Semite creeps. And now they try to tag Trump with this, because he's as an anti-Semite, because some nut job goes in and kills a synagogue of people. How about we tag the real anti-Semites with it, because that's exactly what they're doing is calling for the killing of more Jews. Now, this Bernie, good old Bernie, allegedly a Jew, is not a Jew, of course. He believes in a different religion, and his religion is Marxism. And now you can look at the rest of the squad and go through the squad. Of course, Ilhan, that nut job, she's Muslim, and she's not one of the nice Muslims that believes in tolerance. She's one of the wackadoo extremists. She's so extreme she'll marry her brother to get into this country to bring it down from the inside and lie about how she's an American. She's not. Rashid Tlaib, of course, is a Palestinian herself, and she's in for it. And of course, Presley and the other, I forget his name, Cory Booker or not, something like that. It's Corey something. They're blacks, but they're part of the black wing that the Al Sharpton, Hymietown, were the part of the black wing of the Democratic Party that thinks it's okay to be anti-Semite and can hide behind their color. So it makes complete sense that all these people are, of course, wanting the killing of more Jews. And AOC herself, people seem to forget her name is Cortez, and Cortez was, of course, the Hidalgo, not to be confused with Dago, which is what they call Italians, misnaming the English seamen misnamed the Italians as Dagos because they were swarthy skinned and look Spanish. Hidalgos, of course, is the so-called nobles, the poor nobles in Spain who were rape and murder the way across every chance they can. These are the lower nobles, and that the most famously, they're the ones who, of course, made a backbone of the conquistadors, and of course are the ones who did all the deprecations down to the Indians. Now, in their own defense, the Indians themselves were doing way worse than they ever did. But of course, the most famous of all of them was a Cortez, just like AOC. People seem to forget her name is Cortez. And so, if you want to think about the Hidalgos, the minor nobles, think about if you ever see The Princess Bride, the six-fingered man. That's who the Hidalgos would be, right? So anyway, that's people forget that she is socialist, and socialists, as I linked up last time, were of course the basis of socialism and Marxism. Marx was ethnically a Jew, but of course he hated the Jews. He hated Christianity the most, but he hated the Jews too. And if you look through his writings, especially when he talked about the Jewish question, he talks about how he hates the Jews because the Jews, the haggling and and money, and that he believed the Jews were obsessed with haggling and money. So when he's writing so-called economics, which it wasn't in Das Kapital and in other books, it's really a dog whistle about how he hates the capitalist system and how it's based on money. It's not. It's a dog whistle, just like AOC to their anti-Semitism, because when what they're really talking about, the haggling and the liking of money is for Jewish people. That's why the socialists have always been and the Marxists have always been anti-Semites. Now, in a great book I brought up last time, this one is from Richard Wurmbrand, who was a Romanian priest who was also born Jewish, and he makes the point. Last week I talked about Kengor. Kengor was a historian, and he wants to be judicious and doesn't want to be and won't go where the actual facts do. But this man, Richard Wurmbrand, is one of the great freedom fighters of all time. He was a Romanian priest who saved Jews during the Holocaust, and I've actually spent like 15 years being tortured in Romania by atheists and the communists. I mean, they were beating his feet until they were beating the soles of his feet till the skin was flayed and to his bones were broken, to his heels, to the bones of his heels. But he makes the point. And he brings out that the facts that the history shows that Marx's and Engels' history has been whitewashed of a lot of this. There might be 30 books that we haven't read that are not exposed to the world because he was into this whole cult of devil worshiping. And it just brings to the point of all of these. all these people are united in their anti-Semitism against the Jewish state today for a good reason. They hate the same things, right? They hate America. They hate Christians. They hate Jesus Christ, who was a Jew. And of course, they hate Israel. Now, I want to bring the great AOC, right? As a socialist, I want to bring these words because this kind of brings it all around to one of her kindred socialists. And here's what he says. Now he's talking about, of course, to Otto Strasser, a fellow socialist and communist. And here's what this socialist says to Strasser because they have a dispute. And he says, I am a socialist and a very different kind of socialist from your friend Count Ravensthrow. I was once an ordinary working man. I would not allow my chauffeur to eat worse than I eat myself. What you understand by socialism is nothing but Marxism. Now look, the great mass of working men want only bread and circuses. They have no understanding for the ideals of any sort whatever. And we can never hope to win the workers to any large extent by an appeal to ideals. There are no revolutions except racial revolutions. And there he goes, right? Now, in a lot of ways, and I hate to give the devil his due, but Hitler was the smartest of all the socialists because he understood what was at core the Darwinian idea behind it, and there he goes off on it right there. That's of course Hitler declaring that he was a socialist because, of course, as we know, it's a National Socialist German Working Party, right? The Nazis. Now, if these people, so that's to tie it all together. The socialists and the Marxists, good old, they're all together on the same page, fighting against the forces of good. Now, if they really were pro-Jew, here's what some of the things that they would have done. Well, they would have moved the embassy to the American embassy to Jerusalem. I'm going to ask you a question on this and see if you can get it right. They would okay the Israel declaring that the Golden Heights, which is a strategic, most important strategic area in Israel, where all the countries, whoever holds, it's the high ground for Israel, where if you were an enemy country, you could rush down and literally destroy Israel, cut it in half. You would green light that the Israelis finally declaring that they want it fair and square, and it's theirs now. It's part of Israel. You would do things like cut off money to the Palestinians so that they stop killing Jews and actually negotiate. You would also stop giving money to the Iranians so they can buy weapons to kill Jews. If you were really pro-Jew, these are the things you do. And you might even go as far as to give your only, well, your favorite daughter to the faith of the Jewish faith so that she becomes a Jew. Now, do you know of any political leader that would have done that in the recent past?
I think he was the 45th president.
I want my effing Trump back. And if effing Trump was back, and you would have peace in the Middle East. So,
as we did during his entire term.
Right. So, it really is, as the great Star Parker had said, it is 1850 all over again. We're either going to be biblical and free or statist and atheist. Okay. It is really, it's not left versus right. It's God or against God. It's God or the devil, or good versus evil. And it's about time we start calling AOC what she really is, the anti-Semite AOC, because that's what the socialists are. If you want to call yourself a socialist, and this is from a great book, Hitler and Stalin by Alan Bullock. It's a great book, one of the greatest history books I've ever had a chance to read. Basically, it takes Stalin's life and Hitler's life and takes them parallelly through time. Great book. You can read his words on 169, on page 169 of that book, showing once more that, of course, that the true anti-Semite is, of course, a socialist. And anybody who calls themselves a socialist is either woefully uninformed, or they really do hate Jews and want to see the killing of Jews. And
John, I contend that they do know. But they do know what they're.
I think
They
do.
contend very clearly that Tlaib does, and very, very clearly then that AOC does. Yeah, Omar maybe not. I mean, I'm probably Omar, but I don't know. Actually, I would say Omar knows, but maybe AOC just I don't know if she knows. She's kind of not that bright, you know. Then you get right down to it. But the point being, I get your point. They are just you know,
Socialists
they're
killing Jews yet again.
socialists killing Jews yet again. Part 2. All right, brother. That's very good. Very solid evening for us to discuss. We were at the 1 hour, 5 minute mark. Do you have any final thoughts before we drive on?
It's all good.
It is all good. It's all good. Remember, if you watched this far, thank you for if you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about us. If you didn't like what you heard and you've been listening this far, thank you for giving us a chance. I appreciate what your time on this. But for now, let's all let's go out on the last phrase, brother. It's all good.
Because God loves you.
Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!